I'd had enough of a lackluster marriage, so I was pleased to find this excellent restaurant. I liked the ambiance, the food, and the acoustics. Many restaurants these days have unfinished ceilings that ruin the acoustics and make it impossible to have a quiet conversation over dinner. This was an old house that had been converted into an upscale steakhouse. The individual rooms had been preserved, so there were 7 separate dining areas on 2 levels, each with about 6 tables, well spaced apart to provide a nice degree of intimacy. It was a lovely place for a romantic meal. Dinner was a bit of a disaster. I didn't enjoy a romantic dinner tonight. I was dining with my wife, Sarah. She and I were seated at a table in one of the lower-level dining rooms. She was fidgeting, rarely looking at me. She seemed nervous and afraid, but I could also see the determination. I hadn't uttered a word since arriving. I just wanted to be seated and order drinks while I studied the menu, trying to decide between the fete with blackberries and the beef tornado with Bordeaux sauce. I sipped my single malt on the rocks and looked at my wife. She was still a physically beautiful woman, intelligent and successful. Until recently, I was willing to die for her. But I no longer felt the same way. She didn't know about my change of heart, but I would ruin her plans for this evening by telling her this news, among others. My cell phone rings. John, it's me. John Archer. I'm 49 years old and reasonably successful. I'm a software executive, married for 28 years to someone else now. Yes, Sarah, I sighed softly. I wanted to talk to you about something. Well, this will be a nice change. Sarah looked at me with mild indignation, curving her mouth in annoyance. I hoped my attitude would calm her nerves, make her finally tell me what I knew she wanted. Thank you for your sarcasm, John. It's one of the things I've always liked about you. Thank you, Sarah, but in this case I wasn't being sarcastic. I didn't elaborate. I held her gaze, making another shot of whiskey, until she looked to her left and saw a waiter approaching. I didn't wait. I usually let the lady order first, but tonight I handed him my menu and ordered the filet with blackberries and Spanish rice. Sarah was surprised by my lack of generosity and quickly looked over her menu before deciding to order a salad. Who orders a salad at an award-winning steakhouse? When the waiter left, Sarah fixed her gaze on me again. John, I've been thinking a lot lately about you, about me, well, about us, and I wanted to discuss my thoughts with you. By the grace of God, there's an immeasurable difference between too late and too late. I replied, I'm sorry. Sarah asked, a day late and $1 less. I sighed. You were always ready to shout in the rain. Sarah, keep shouting. You're not being very helpful. John, I'm serious. What did you want? I'd like to talk about Sarah. I don't know how to say this. I swirled my glass slowly, brushing condensation off with my thumb and fingers on either side of the glass as I turned it. Just tell me what's on your mind. Well, I want to try a period of separation, she whispered. Nothing permanent. John, it's just an opportunity for me to explore my thoughts further. I'll get the separation. No. She suddenly looked directly at me, shocked. A strand of her blonde hair fell across her face, as she threw her head up too quickly to hold it back. I'm sorry, what do you mean no breaking up would do us good? It would help me fall in love with you again, and Sarah, I don't want you to fall in love with me again. I think we need to take a step back and explore things with my replacement. So, which came first, falling in love with me or giving yourself permission to seek out my replacement? John, I didn't replace you, and I'm not looking to replace you. We both agree that our marriage has become stale. I think some time apart will help us determine how we can fix it and get back to where we were. It's been a while, and for the past 2 years I've been trying to change that. Unfortunately, until recently, there was only one person working on our marriage, and now there are 3. Of course, these 3 are working in different directions. I raised my hand to address all the objections I had anticipated. You've replaced me, Sarah. You cheated on me, and now you want me to agree to an arrangement where you can explore this relationship further. You want to separate. Explore your relationship with Dan, not your relationship with me. I'm not going to let that happen, Sarah. She was angry, twisting the napkin in her hands and glaring at me. She hissed, You're wrong. I did not cheat on you with Dan, and he is not your replacement. Are you telling me, Sarah, that you haven't slept with Dan yet, but you definitely cheated on me with him, and you replaced me with him? She looked uncomfortable. Keep your voice down, John. There's no need to broadcast. Sarah, why are we having problems? You've already done it. Who did you discuss this separation idea with besides me? She looked very uncomfortable. I may have discussed it a couple of times with Dan. Just at that moment, our entree arrived. Discussing our marital problems with Dan before you discuss them with me isn't cheating. It's not the same as coming to a decision about our marriage with Dan and then telling me, not asking me, but specifically telling me your decision is not cheating. Dan contributes more to my marriage than I do. She was silent, seething with rage as the dishes were set out in front of us. I winked at the young serving girl, who looked a little awkward herself. Sarah hissed at me again, saying, "You make it sound so vile." "John, Dan is my friend, willing listener and counselor. He has been nothing but kind, considerate, and helpful. He's someone I can rely on. He understands me, appreciates me, and doesn't judge me." Our waiter came over to check on our well-being. "Sarah, you're being disgusting. You insult my intelligence, our marriage, and our past. You've ruined our future. Dan is trickier than a boiled onion, and he needs to be peeled. I would have thought you'd be cheating, not cheating. Thank you. My dish looks wonderful," I told our waiter, as he waited patiently for me to cut my fillet, and agree that it was cooked as I requested. "I don't appreciate what you're doing, John. Sarah clearly felt out I'm not a cheater, and you're wrong about Dan. In fact, I think you'd like him. He's a lot like you in a lot of ways." "John, I'm glad you see Dan and I as interchangeable. Sarah, you'll never know how pleased I am with that. I think you're crazy. For the record, in every relationship that matters, Dan and I are nothing alike. I don't get into other men's marriages to ruin them. I don't make love to other men's wives. I certainly won't play his games. Sarah, you cheated on me. You come to Dan with your problems and your victories. You talk to him about our personal lives. You seek his advice, his company, and his companionship. All the things you've stopped sharing with me. You're a cheater, and that makes me sick." I looked at the shocked expression on her face, took a bite of the fillet and chewed it happily, put the fork aside and took a sip of water. I raised my eyes to Sarah, who was looking at. "I can see this news has upset you, John. I didn't mean to hurt you. Did you think I would? Sarah, you're just out of your mind. You knew cheating on me would hurt me. That's why you kept it a secret. You didn't intend to hurt me. Well, you also didn't intentionally try to keep me out of harm's way." I pushed my plate away, pulled out my wallet and tossed $200 on the table. I got up from the table, drank the rest of the whiskey and looked at Sarah and said, "I'm not going to let you separate us, Sarah. I've filed for divorce. We've already got divorced." Sarah fought back, stubbornly demanding counseling in ridiculous terms. She refused to sign the divorce papers or bargain in good faith, demanding that I meet with her to discuss our marriage. I refused. I told her I would talk to her after the divorce was final. I didn't want to have a contentious divorce so we could be civil with our children and grandchildren. I wanted a divorce and I finally got one. We split everything in half and I left. I sent Sarah a note demanding she explain why she gave up on our marriage and didn't fight for me. She sent me a picture of her making love to Dan. She sent it 3 days after I left the restaurant when we met for dinner. She hadn't slept with Dan yet. It's been 2 days since we went out. What restraint I heard back from her about that. I don't date a lot. I'm not a Casanova. As long as I'm not dating, I prefer my own company or the company of my children, grandchildren, and close friends. At first, my children were on Sarah's side. They didn't understand what she had done wrong. I felt I had failed in my role as a father. After explaining my position to them, I asked them if they would accept it if their spouse clearly stopped loving them and started a relationship with someone else. If they were in a relationship with someone else, would they accept that and agree to a separation so that their unfaithful spouse could explore an adulterous relationship without the guilt and inconvenience that a spouse is likely to cause? I couldn't do that. I didn't do that. Sarah gave up any serious attempt to resolve our marital problems. Instead of discussing them with me, she found someone else to confide in, someone else to discuss the future of my marriage with, which was simply unacceptable. Eventually, my children understood, and our relationship improved while their relationship with their mother deteriorated. We're both less happy and happier at the same time. We're less happy because we're alone, but we're happier because we found a way forward on our own. Sarah remarried and divorced again within 2 years of our divorce. She and Dan didn't get married and never slept together at all, except for that one time. I don't know or care why I didn't get married again. I retired early and moved to a rural area where I remain to this day. I'm happy that I don't have to waste energy on a woman who doesn't deserve it or want it. However, I was really sad to lose the woman I married and what I thought we could share together. I was happy to get out of an exhausted marriage to a woman I no longer knew, respected, or loved. We had many good years, but they faded away and Sarah eventually left. I was the one who pulled the plug on our marriage, but she was the one who fired the shot. Marriage is hard, divorce is hard, life is hard. The end.